Today's date is March 16th, 2014. Time is approximately 22:25. Detective Todd Babcock, Albuquerque Police Department. Also present is Detective Fred Beers with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. We are at 812 Piedra Vista Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're going to be conducting an interview with, can you state your full name and spell your last name for me?
Mitch Bengston, Bengston.
Alright. Okay. And Mitch, who are you employed by?
New Mexico State Police.
Alright. Incident here early, an officer involved shooting. Can you just start basically at the beginning, run us through how you became involved, what happened?
I was initially contacted by radio as the only state unit on duty in the Albuquerque area. Requested to assist Albuquerque Police Department at the Copper Trailhead in the foothills. This was, I'd have to look at the CAD card, but I think it was about 17:30 hours when I was advised. Requested more information, also requested them contact my supervisor, who was not actually on duty yet, Sergeant Chris Ware. While I was en route, they updated me that APD was out with a possibly mental type of subject who did have knives and had threatened officers. Was requesting state police to be a liaison between himself and APD officers. I was sent to 812. Initially, the call was for the trailhead, and then I was advised of this address, 812 Piedra Vista, which I came to, and I was advised to go through their yard, out the back of their yard, and I would see the APD officers up on the hill. It was daylight time at that time, so when I arrived, I went through the backyard, and during this time, my Coban car video, which is a digital recording system, was engaged, and that microphone was on my belt. Also had on my digital recorder, which I engaged once I got up closer to the APD officers. From the back of the houses to the east, approximately 150 yards, there were several APD officers kind of in a semicircle facing mostly to the north. Obviously, the top of the circle is facing slightly south. Let me think of the directions here. It's going to be north west, and the other end of the circle is kind of facing northeast. Complete that semicircle. Initially couldn't see anybody, but I could tell that they were talking to someone. Several had rifles. There was a gentleman with a taser out. Also, someone with a beanbag shotgun. At that point, I arrived, spoke with a sergeant who was kind of controlling the scene at that point. He briefed me that this subject was calling himself B.A., and that he was with Department of Defense as a private contractor, that he did have a knife in each of his front pockets. At that point, his hands were empty. The sergeant said that the guy had requested to speak with state police and asked if I could try to kind of talk him down a little bit. I initiated contact with him, and at this time, my Coban, I was out of reach for the audio to pick up on the in-car camera, but my belt tape was recording. Talked to him for 15 to 20 minutes, trying to talk him down. Anytime I mentioned weapons, he said that he had jurisdictional dominance over state police, and that I didn't need to ask him about anything like that. He continually talked about the downfall of the U.S. economy and shortfall of money in 4 to 5 months. Said that he had that information on his phone. When the APD sergeant briefed me, he said that they had told him not to proceed forward of a particular rock that he was standing right in front of. He tried to tell me that he would give me the phone, and he started to approach, and I immediately backed him off and said, no, you need to stay there. Just put the phone down. We'll recover it. We need you to come down and talk with us, somewhere in a neutral setting, away from, all of this nonsense. We just want to, get somewhere out indoors where we can talk, have a little bit better conversation. At that point, I heard my sergeant walk up behind me and get briefed by the same sergeant, Sergeant Chris Ware, and I'm not sure of the APD sergeant's name. They briefed for a little while as I spoke with the gentleman some more, and he continued to talk about he wanted a hotel room that had been promised to him. He had superiority jurisdictionally over all agencies, and we couldn't give him any options. He would give us options, and he would choose for us. He made very, very good sense. He spoke very articulately, but I did notice that when he would kind of start to mumble to himself, he would always go back into the downfall of the economy. So that kind of seemed to be his kind of fallback, in a mental state of mind. Shortly after that, Sergeant Ware actually took my place and started speaking with the gentleman, and I backed off about 5 feet. Gentleman became very agitated. While I was speaking with him, got him to identify himself as, what was the name he gave? He gave Johnny. That's also on my CAD because we immediately ran him. I was able to talk him into giving me his last known identity that was given to him by the Department of Defense, and it was out of New Mexico. They were able to run it and get that information on a CAD card. When he started speaking with Sergeant Ware, he became very agitated because he felt that Sergeant Ware was starting to escalate the situation by telling him what he was going to do, what his options were. That he needed to put the knives down, come down and speak with us. And he became very agitated, started yelling off and on. Then he'd go back to coherent, conversation. Sergeant Ware and I agreed that this gentleman was not going to be talked down very easily. We were advised that K-9 was en route. Also, crisis negotiators were en route, and they, under the premise that hopefully they would be able to talk him down a little bit better than we were able to. Once K-9 arrived, I backed off completely from my conversation with him and started to set up a containment area. I was assigned to the team that went to the north. We were actually down on a trailhead because multiple people were, still running and hiking and biking and whatnot on the trails. So keeping them clear, as well as with me was an open space unit, and 2 APD uniforms were also right there in the area. On the arrival of K-9, I don't remember the handler's name, but the K-9 was Rico. He came to my location, kind of on the north west corner of the containment area, and we could hear crisis negotiations arrived on scene, as well as K-9 high ground for APD SWAT started to set up. Officer Purdue came and made contact with us to kind of get an overview of the scene, and then he went back around to the south, where he eventually set up. I'm not sure. We cleared it because of the lines of fire for where we were kind of overlapping, and we didn't want any kind of overlapping fields of fire. So myself, Anthony Sedler with APD SWAT, the K-9 Rico and his handler, and the open space officer moved further to the east of the subject. We moved up the hill to the east, and so we actually had a position above him, and we could cover all of the routes of egress that he could use that were back to the north from his location there in the rocks. While we were there, we could hear they were discussing options for continuing negotiations with him. The sun was starting to go down, which was a major concern for us because we were going to lose visual if he were to start running. And very hilly, rocky area with a lot of places where officers could fall. A lot of cactus, which is always fun. So we were concerned about the daylight setting. We were in that position for about 6 or 7 minutes, and APD SWAT officer, who I actually went through SWAT school with, asked me if I was comfortable taking his beanbag gun. So I took the beanbag gun. He was up on a rifle. The open space officer was assigned to a taser and open hands, and then the canine handler obviously had his canine as his deployment method. That way we had all avenues covered for our team as far as lethal, less lethal, taser and open hands, and the canine. We advised Jim Fox. I heard them identify him as 10 on the radio, I think. We advised him of what our situation was as a team element, and he was good with that, so we held our position there. About 10 minutes later, I continued to hear this gentleman yelling and screaming. At one point, he was throwing rocks at the people down below him. I believe it was the negotiators at that point. He threw a sandwich that he had gone to his bags and gotten, and then returned back to his original location. From where we were on the north side, we were not able to see him because of the rock features that were in the way. We could only see the avenues where he could escape from if he were to go to the north. We heard a flashbang, and then repeated commands, and directly after the flashbang and then the commands, we heard, and it was gunfire. I'm not sure. I do not know if it was from lethal or less lethal. From as close as we were with the rocks echoing all of the sounds, I would say there were probably 4 to 5 shots fired from a lethal, as well as several less lethal that were fired. And Sergeant Ware actually came over State Police air and advised that shots had been fired. And they cleared our air for a few minutes until we could kind of assess the situation. And like I said, I didn't have eyes on, so I was not able to see what was going on. But pretty soon, maybe 3 to 5 minutes later, they cleared our air and made it back operational. At that point, Anthony Sedler with APD SWAT broke open a green chem light to mark our position, put it on a rock directly where we were standing, and we egressed out of the area directly to the west, kind of back the way we had come.
All right. Let's do this first. If you could, on this piece of paper, best you can, kind of do a diagram. I don't know if you want to start down here with the house as a reference, for me, and just best you can, kind of the terrain as far as the rocks you mentioned, your relation to the subject, other officers, if you're aware of it.
described to you initially. So I pulled up in front of 812 Piedra Vista, went through the backyard, obviously through the gate that's located in the, it's going to be the southeast corner of the backyard. There's kind of a small trail that moves out to the main copper trailhead that kind of snakes its way through, which I kind of drew in here. Crossed that and initially moved, and this is all uphill to one large peak that runs almost directly to the east of this residence. We moved uphill until I was about, I'd say about 15 yards from the subject. I was directly down the hill from him, next to an APD officer, several APD officers on the initial approach in that semicircle that I was talking about. And all of them were faced kind of inboard toward the main subject, who was standing behind a rock. This was the rock that they had told him, do not proceed any further south of that rock, or he was going to be beanbagged. Off to his right, off to the west, he had kind of a little lean-to made with a tarp, multiple backpacks, duffel bags, whatnot, that were kind of in a stack right there next to the tarp. All of this, like I said, is very rugged rocks and scrub brush areas with a lot of cactus. After we determined that he was not going to be, he was not being compliant, there wasn't a whole lot that we were going to be able to do. I came back down to the trailhead, wrapped around, and was off waiting for a team to kind of assemble there to the northwest of the subject. And from there, we were about 50 yards from him at that point. Every once in a while, he would stand up, and we'd be able to see him. He'd stand up on one of these rocks right here, and we'd be able to see him line of sight. But other than that, once he was standing in his normal position, we were not able to see him at all. Once we had our team assembled, we moved up the hill, up into more of the rocks that were a little bit more to the northeast of the subject. And then I put in where our positioning was in that kind of stack order. With SWAT having the lethal, I was next to him with less lethal beanbag. Open space obviously was behind us for a little bit of shelter because he was going to be hands-on. And then K9 was back a little bit further even than that and up the hill. So those are the three different positions that I was in. Well, you can actually put one. And then once we heard the bang, multiple shots, we waited kind of to figure out what was going on over the radio. They called for an ambulance, which we could actually see from our location down here at the trailhead, which I believe that this is actually copper right here where it kind of dead ends. There's a dead end street that turns into the dirt, into the trail that I was talking about, where the bikes,
right,
runners and everything like to go out into this area. So we could actually see the ambulance when they called for it, and it drove up the trail, up pretty much up to as close as they could get to that location where the subject was. Excuse me. And from there, we egressed directly back down the hill to the trail, took the trail back to the same origin point, and walked straight back to the meeting.
Okay. On this, could you do me a favor up here? Could you just kind of do a north, south, east, west?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For me, please. If you could, Mitch, could you... Thank you. Can you just throw a date on there for me?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Is it still the...
It is still the 16th.
16th?
Yes, it's 22:48 hours.
All right.
Okay. So, going in, how long were you marked it first? How long would you say you were in this position?
I would guesstimate about 30 minutes.
Okay. That's when you were having the dialogue with
Correct.
the individual?
Yes.
Okay. Then you move out from there, go to the second.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you guys at the second, would you think?
Probably another 40 or so minutes.
Okay.
In there.
And then from there you go up to the third till the conclusion of the incident. During the time period that you were here for 30 minutes, did you see, I know you said that the subject had mentioned something about knives. Did you ever see the knives?
I did not ever see the knives. I was able to keep him calm enough while I was speaking with him that he did not reach into his pockets. He didn't produce any knives. I guess once I had moved back around and Sergeant Ware was talking with him and he became very agitated, I guess at that point he did pull one out. I heard it called over the radio, but I did not see one.
Okay.
During the time that I had contact with him.
Okay, and then moving to your third position, even from the second position to the third position, you have really no visual?
That is correct. The only time that we had, at the second position that we had contact with him, was he jumped up on a rock and began yelling at us that we were threatening him, that we were creating a trap for him, and he was extremely agitated. That was during the time frame when he was speaking with Sergeant Ware. He jumped back down and we were no longer able to see him, and I did not get eyes on him again after that. Okay,
so when he jumped up on this rock, you said he's yelling at you. Did he turn?
Yes, he was facing directly at us. He left his position there, jumped up on the rock to look directly at us.
Okay, and you're pointing to the rock that is just to the left of where you have the tarp.
Correct.
Drawn. Okay. Okay. So up here in your third position, I just want to clarify since I'm looking at it now, you have less than lethal beanbag.
Correct.
SWAT officer is deployed with what, do you know?
Lethal rifle.
Okay.
I believe it's his M4.
And then the open space had a handheld taser or shotgun?
He had a handheld taser that was on his belt.
Okay. And then K9, obviously.
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any questions about the map?
No, I understand. Thank you.
Okay. I feel like I'm neglecting you back there, sorry.
No.
Okay. Only other thing, because that clarifies that for me. You said 4 to 5 shots. On those 4 to 5 shots, you also said, and possibly less than lethal? Or is the less than lethal included in the 4 to 5 shots you thought you heard? Or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
At that point, we had ricochets that came directly over our heads, and I could hear the snap. So we dropped. So I wasn't listening real intently at that point.
Okay.
I was able to review my Coban video, and the microphone did pick up on the Coban. It wasn't able to pick up my voice because I was so far away from the camera. However, it did pick up the flashbang as well as the shots that had been fired.
Okay.
So that's on my in-car video.
Okay. And then just clarify, once the ambulance starts coming up, do you ever come back over here to where the subject is by this rock?
I did not.
Okay.
In fact, I came back down. There was an APD unit that had been brought up by the crisis negotiator team. I believe that's who it was. I stopped at it to check in with them to make sure I was clear to move back to my unit. Once they cleared me and said, yeah, go, then I came back in.
Okay.
But I did not go back up into the rocks with me.
Okay. All right. Fred, do you have anything else?
So just asking about your Coban video, was that the in-car microphone that picked up that?
No, it's a microphone that's actually on my belt.
Wait, I thought that was out of range. That's what I was just...
It was out of range for normal voice tones.
Oh, okay.
But it did pick up the flashbang because they were such a large percussion.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then you also said you have a belt tape.
Correct.
That we'll go back down and turn over.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else you can think of that I didn't ask that we didn't cover?
No, and I have not reviewed my conversation with him, but I know that there was a lot more to it as far as in-depth of trying to talk him down. but I don't remember everything that was said. I was just trying to throw everything I could at him to get him to de-escalate and come down and talk to us, or put the knives down first and come down and talk to us.
Did he seem receptive to that?
No, not whatsoever. In fact, I after talking with him for about 10 minutes, I thought to myself, he's not going to de-escalate. He's not going to do it.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Time is now approximately 22:54 hours, and we will conclude this interview.